Rapping mimosa, these bars in the holster. Pouring up a drink, put my name on the poster. Women who can rap make you come a little closer. Step out the whip, drop a tip to my chauffeur. New guest on my list, champagne's by my hips. It's time to get lit, y'all know what it is. It's time to rap, and mimosas.
Woo! And welcome to another great live episode of Rap and Mimosas. Today's topic is all about self-sabotage. How we sabotage ourselves in business, love, and the list goes on. Okay, today we have a great guest. I know I like to have a guest on every episode. And her name is Brianna. Brianna, go ahead and say hi to the people.
Hi, people. I'm happy to be here. Excited to dive into my business, whatever that means. And yeah, excited to also dive into some more champagne.
Absolutely. Now, as you all know, I have sponsors now. I do not have a sponsored mimosa this week. However, I am sipping on some Rosé Bel Air. Okay, feeling real, just a little razzle dazzle. And of course, you all know that my location is the Urban of Miami, Florida. Looking for a hot place to be. Every Friday we have Vibe After 5 here, so please check out the Urban if you are ever in Miami or if you live in Miami. The Urban, Miami, Florida. Now, we already know that Brianna here is going to end up rapping. Maybe more than once. Okay, so I want to give that disclaimer. Brianna is not a rapper, nor am I. There's no record deals on the table. This is just all good fun. Okay, now Brianna, for those who don't know, not only where are you from originally, but what do you do?
So I am from Tallahassee, Florida, and at this point, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, but recently moved from New Orleans, Louisiana. And what I do in this season is enjoy my black ass life because I'm on a sabbatical. And so what that means is just spending a year working on myself, investing in myself, and learning myself.
First of all, everybody can't just take sabbatical, so that's why we're gonna get into your business, right? Of what a sabbatical looks like. Okay, at least for her, all right, because I don't know, and I don't know, maybe someone in the audience has, but I never met anyone who took a sabbatical from work at this age, especially. I've heard of people retiring. But I've never heard of anyone being like, I'm just not at this age going to work for a year, and be okay with it. Because I know I'm not in that position yet. So we're going to talk about that a bit. But, the main topic for today is self-sabotage. So before we actually go further, let's talk about what is self-sabotage to you?
I think of self-sabotage mainly through my thoughts. I think of it as something that is so intrusive that it stops me from doing what I intended to do or what I was trying to achieve, or it even stops me from getting into the space where I think about achievement and maybe I just have this spirit of defeat.
And if you're watching live right now, feel free to tell me what is self-sabotage to you all as well. When I think of self-sabotage and the idea of sabotaging myself, I think of literally anything that puts a hindrance on me from me. Right? So whether that be my thoughts, whether that be actions that I do consciously or even subconsciously, because sometimes we subconsciously self-sabotage ourselves and don't realize that we're doing it. And it's funny because now at this age, I can actually call out when I see other people doing self-sabotage. I was watching an old season of Bad Girls Club for some reason, season 2, right back when I actually used to watch the show in middle school or high school. And this girl was in this relationship. If you ever watched Bad Girls Club from season 2, there was this girl who was a stripper, a porn star, all this stuff, right? And she was engaged to this man who loved her dirty draws, okay? But what she ends up doing is being well, I'm not a normal girl and I can't be with him. So she cheats on him and then pretty much pushes him away and then says, I want to take a break. And then he was just all right, if you want to take a break, whatever that means, because it's not she was oh, we don't do anything anymore, we're boring, this and that. And he was just life is not always about to be some party, and she was I don't care. And he was okay. But then what ends up happening, she tries to go get this tattoo. She's crying every day. She's drinking. She was just like, she had the other guy in her bed. And she was like, I want Tyler, whatever his name was. I want Tyler to be the one that's here. And I just wish I was a normal girl because then I could love him. And I was watching it. I was like, I just kept saying self-sabotage. So every time she made a statement that dealt with how she pretty much wasn't deserving of him. Because that was ultimately what it came down to when people talked to her. This feeling of not being deserving, right? So she would rather cheat and push him away and say, well, I'm a bad girl and that's what bad girls do. So that's, he can go away. But then, of course, it becomes, oh my gosh, Tyler, I'm so sorry. Please take me back. Right? And Tyler just like, nah.
Yeah.
Nah. Like, you do too much. Right? And sometimes when we're in relationships with people, whether it's friendships or family, sometimes when we're in business, business propositions, there's this element of self-sabotage that we do. Where do you think self-sabotage comes from, you all? And you can answer that question too. Where does self-sabotage actually come from? And maybe, do you have a moment where you realize, damn, I self-sabotage myself?
I would say when I experience moments that I've self-sabotaged myself, it definitely came from my fears. I think fear is very powerful, and the root of a lot of the things that I have reflected on, right, when I was doing something that just didn't make sense and worked against me, was usually the result of fear, right? And so sometimes that fear is not explicit, to your point earlier about maybe something is subconscious, right? I know that there are things that may have happened in that experience that weren't, I'm going to go out and cheat. And that's because I want to end this relationship. But ultimately, she did.
Oh, what?
Oh, see, I didn't watch it. So
she was like, Tyler's great, but Scott's here right now. And fuck it. I was like, oh.
Well, and even in that, right, explanation, it's so void of this concept of I'm afraid I'm not good enough for him, which is what I think it sounds like you're saying is at the root of some of the things that came out later in interviews. So I think that sometimes I tell myself either I'm not good enough for this amazing experience, something's too good to be true. Like, all of these things have me looking for the fault and looking for something to be wrong, and thus creating energy that really supports self-sabotage in my case.
I would agree. I would definitely say, like, it's the feelings of not good enough. And then sometimes, like, having to take a moment to think, what from my past has ever taught me that I'm not worthy? Right? Like, what was it? Was it something implied? Was it something explicitly told to me? Was it something that someone did or didn't do? Right? That might have been a need that I didn't at the time realize it was a need, but now it's this deep-seated need, and because it wasn't met by a parent or a guardian, or was neglected in some way, shape, or form, has turned into feelings of I'm not worthy, right? So if you think about, like, this idea of self-worth, that's something that as young as a child, that's something that people teach us through how they treat themselves, but also in how they, like, talk to us and how they treat us and reward us, especially at a young age of, like, this is what your self-worth actually is. So for a while, I used to attach my self-worth to my hair, right? Because of the fact that the one thing I got complimented on was my hair. Before I had an afro, these are faux locks. If you follow the show, you know that I normally have an afro of some sort. But before any of that, I had my hair relaxed, laid, dyed, fried to the side, okay? Or was it fried, dyed, laid to the side? Something of that nature. One of them. And when I would wear my hair like that, my hair used to be like, when I first got it relaxed, my hair was like mid-back and things like that. And I always got these compliments of, oh my gosh, your hair is so pretty. And it would be the first thing people would say.
Yeah.
But they would say, you're pretty, oh my gosh, your personality is great, unless I was doing something performative, right? But it just became always about my hair. So after a while, I just equated my beauty to my hair, and I created, like, my worth to performances. So if you know, at one point my hair broke off, right? Because I was still learning how to do my own hair, you know. So late middle school, early high school, I was putting too much heat. My hair broke off. And I lost my mind. I lost my mind. I would boo-hoo cry. I was like, no one's going to think I'm pretty anymore. In my mind, my worth was attached to my hair. My worth was attached to me performing on stage or performing at a church, right? Because that was what I got complimented on. You know, I wasn't getting the, oh my gosh, Lashandra, you know, you're such a, you know, resilient young girl, the way that you failed that test, but you're coming back. Like, it was never a compliment on my personality. And I realized a lot of times that may happen. It was just surface level. So my worth was attached to only surface level things. I didn't understand the depths of actually having self-worth until post-college. Right? Because everything that was complimented to me was something else. So when I think about, like, self-sabotage, it comes from, once again, this deep-seated, like, I don't feel worthy because of blank. And a lot of times the stuff that make us not feel worthy is something, once again, a need was not met. Like, for me, I didn't really know the inner worth within myself, I feel. So because that was something not taught to me, because that was something not said to me, it was very easy for me to not feel worthy if it wasn't going to be something based off of my performance or my hair or my looks in some way, shape, or form. So if it's something relying on any other skill, I'm like, I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. I'm not worthy of X, Y, and Z because I don't think I'm good at that. And I don't think I'm good at that because all of my validation came from external sources about performing and looks. So a lot of times, like, that started this self-concept of, like, you know, I used to wear a bang all the time because I got a compliment so much on my hair, especially when I had a bang. Everyone said the bang framed my face nice. So when I remember I joined my sorority and I remember I was doing something. It's like, why you got that bang, girl? Just move the bang. And I was like, oh, no. You know, I need the bang because I associated my looks, like, with having either a swoop or having a bang. The idea of not having either of those things, I felt like my beauty was not my actual face, but once again, something dealing with my hair. And if my hair was not present in front of my face, I was not beautiful.
Yeah, that is something that I think, you know, one of the things that you said that really stood out to me is, like, when you're seeking your understanding of your worth externally and the vulnerable position that can put you in. And so one of, like, my most exciting dating experiences was with a guy who I just had such a deep connection to this guy, right? Gonna be withholding names.
Okay. We're going to call him John.
We'll call him John.
John Doe.
We'll call him John Doe. But what I really appreciated about him is there was a bit of a mystery. And there was this moment where I was like, something, you know, especially when we're dating, sometimes we look for things, right? And this is, again, going down this self-sabotage, like, road. And I was like, something feels weird. Like, I feel so connected to this guy. Everything's going great. And I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. And so I talked to him about it because we talked about everything. And we talked it out. And I realized that he had given me every type of affirmation, confirmation, validation as it related to my mind, as it related to things that I shared with him about my goals, to things that I shared about, you know, my own awareness. And I felt so comfortable opening up to him. But he didn't do some of the other things that I had experienced in dating, which was a focus on my physical. And I kept finding myself wondering, like, is he really attracted to me? And despite the fact that we spent all this time on the phone, despite the fact that we were sharing all of these things, I still felt myself, like, scraping or looking for something to be like, something is off. And so we talked through it. And one of the things that was really powerful about that is I was able to bring that up with him, and we actually ended up coming out with something totally unexpected, which was this idea of, what is the value of someone thinking that you're beautiful? And why does that matter to you? And what do you do when they don't? right? What does that do to you? How does that change you? How do you allow that to have power over you? And ultimately, I was dating men that did do that stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, that's like the fill in the blank compliment. Like, that doesn't move me. So why was I looking for that from him? And it was just really a powerful self-awareness moment for me to understand that when I was in school, what I was praised for was my ability to follow through and pull off all the things, juggle all the things. And now I am at a point where like this sabbatical is absolutely necessary, and I'm pausing and I'm saying that my value is not in productivity. And for Black women, that is a hell of a statement to make, because we are literally, I think that we have a lot on our backs. And so when I tell people I'm doing a sabbatical, the first reaction is confusion, shock, like, you don't mean a sabbatical. And then when I tell them I'm doing it for a full year, same thing. And so again, some of the things that we have internalized and said, this is my value, can also contribute to that self-sabotage. Because if somebody tells you that you're good at climbing trees, but you a fish, you're still going to be like, well, let me just keep climbing these trees, right? Because somebody else told me I was good at it. Even if I don't like it, even if I don't enjoy it, even if it's not something that I'm interested in, I'm going to keep climbing trees because that's what they said I was good for.
Absolutely. You know, I think that it's so important to note, like, this idea of, like, once again, if we're not, and I do believe it's something that's taught at a young age, if we're not taught at a young age to affirm ourselves, right? And I can't speak for every person, but I know for me, it was not taught that I should affirm myself. I had to learn over time the importance of affirming me, LaShondra. And I remember, like, because I was always performing, I was in theater, I was doing everything in church. And when I was, in college, I was performing and doing a lot of stuff with my sorority or doing stuff with these different organizations. And then when I left and I started to teach, fresh out of college, I had no idea who I was outside of any of that. I had no idea who I was outside of my sorority, because it was my first time as an adult being separated from that norm. I had no idea who I was as a woman. I was like, what do I enjoy doing for fun? Is teaching really for me? Wait, this doesn't feel right. What does that mean? There was no idea of what that was. So what I started to do was search externally for things to fill that gap. And for me, that often would be in the form of relationships, right? And being performative in those spaces. So I wasn't spending still the time on myself, even though I started to kind of search for the idea of a therapist. I also started to, I got into this relationship, God swept me off my feet, and I immediately became Susie Homemaker, right? I'm, cooking at least once or twice a week. I'm helping clean the house that I don't live in and washing dishes, and to the point where, I was so used to being with him, I still had no idea what I like to do for fun. It was work, him, work. And then at one point, he started to want to do more stuff, with himself and with his boys. So then it was like, what do I do? And I was clingy a little bit. And he was just like, yo, you got to figure out, you, right? So when I started to figure out me, though, then that became a problem. Because then it was like, well, wait, dang, you doing all this stuff by yourself? Because I'm trying to figure it out. I'm getting back involved in theater, but still I was going from performing as a girlfriend to now I'm going to perform in this show. And I still had no type of intrinsic value. And when you don't have your own affirmations going on who you are as a person, I'm allowing other people to define me. So if they told me, whatever they told me, I would absorb, right? Oh my gosh, you're such a great person. Thank you. Yes, I am. Oh my gosh, you're horrible. Oh my gosh, I'm horrible, right? And what it would a lot of times lead to is I would spiral. And the spiral would lead to me, grasping for straws of some sort. And my self-sabotage often wasn't me sabotaging relationships. It would be in the form of me just neglecting myself. And I think for me, self-sabotage is anytime you are a hindrance to yourself and to your own growth. So I'm gonna hold on to this relationship that I know is not working, right, longer than I possibly should have, because of the simple fact that I need something to hold on to. I'm going to hold on and stay in this job because I'm scared of what it looks like to let go of it and find something new. I'm going to stay in this spot and do these things. And that was my version of sabotaging myself because I was hindering my own growth. Like, leaving that relationship, it's painful, but then it leads to a new area of growth, right? If you do the work. And anytime you stop yourself from doing the work on you is a moment of self-sabotage. So I want to ask this next question, right? All right. Let's talk about what led you to the sabbatical.
Okay.
Okay, right? Because you're in this current space of like, I need to work on me. What led you to saying, I need to work on me to the point where I want to halt anything else right now as far as work? How, like, because, you know, a lot of times it's like, okay, yeah, I'll stop dating for a year, but I still got to work. So what does this sabbatical look like, and how did you get here?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I went through several like false start moments. So I was in education, in an education nonprofit in the leadership world, and it came with its own challenges. But ultimately, I decided that okay, it's been a couple years. It's time for me to work on the thing that I'm really excited about, because when I came into that work, I was doing things that were much different versus, you know, when I got into leadership. It wasn't things that I was truly passionate about. And so I decided to leave, but before I could leave, there was a pandemic. There was a complete shutdown. There was a complete reframing of the programming that we were doing. And so you can imagine how stressful that environment was, right? And so it felt like a pressure cooker. But I told myself in my self-sabotage way that I'm going to take a break, but I'm going to, start going deeper into my marketing consulting work, and I'm going to launch my agency part-time. Not true. I basically dived in full-time, had a waiting list, was hiring contractors to sustain all of the interest, and I was also overwhelmed. I went from one frying pan to one fire to, whatever the next level up is from that. I was simply wiped out. And I told myself, because I would be working for myself, it would be better, that I would be happy. And that I knew that I could do marketing, and that was probably my work because I could do it. But the truth was, I could do it well, people would pay me for it, but I didn't enjoy it. And so I had a mentor at the time who kind of nudged me and was like, yeah, you had mentioned doing a sabbatical after you left 4.0. What happened? I was like, oh, not that. And I suppose there were some moments that happened, of course, across the pandemic. Like, we all naturally were impacted in different ways. But what I realized was, like, I never once let up. Every single time the pandemic, like, flared or had these, like, turning points, everyone was talking about, around me in my circle was like, oh, we finally got a chance to slow down. I was not slowing down. For some reason, I was picking up more and more and more, and I was killing myself, And so I had been very diligent with my saving. I had been very diligent with so many things because I also had this scarcity mindset. And it's so interesting how sometimes we like slam these things as being all negative, but sometimes they also have some things that we benefit from, because ultimately, like, we learn those skills because they were to protect us.
Yep.
So I had a ton of saving that I had been doing because I was so scared of not being financially secure. And I also had known in my heart that, like, I wasn't happy and fulfilled doing the marketing work. So I decided to start asking myself, what would it look like to fire clients? And I asked myself that enough to actually start to dream about not working with them anymore. And for me, my personality, my makeup, once I think something, the thoughts are powerful because my heart follows. And once my heart follows, I am there. Like, I am either in it or I'm not in it. And I decided at first to do 6 months. And once I got on a 6-month train, I realized there was more scarcity mindset, and I said, nope, I'm going to do a full year. And I also struggled with calling it a sabbatical, but it was so much personal struggle, right, in that. And there was a reason, and that reason for me to be very clear about it being a sabbatical is exactly what you said when we first started. You don't know anyone at my age who has done a sabbatical. I have sat across from people who are retiring, and they look at me like, how dare you? But I have also sat across from Black women, and every single time I talk about it, they're like, I wish I could do that. And so it's very intentional for me, one, to use the word sabbatical, and two, for me to commit to this gift, right? This absolute privilege and blessing, because I have been given the opportunity to do something that so few people get to do. And I have invested in so many people. I have invested in so many companies. I have been worked. So why am I not looking at myself as worthy enough for an investment from me, right? Like, to think of the ability to spend 1 year just working on investing in myself is such a gift. And I think I'm a damn good investment. So that's how I got here. Like, I am going to see what happens when I say I'm going to give myself a year of time. I'm going to give myself a year of resources. I'm going to give myself a space and supports that surface as I'm doing this work that I might need. And so that's how that unfolded.
Okay. So now you're in this sabbatical, and you're learning new things about yourself as you're going through the sabbatical, right? So the question now, of course, leads to, and this because we're talking about this idea, this concept, right, of self-sabotage. And I know for me, when I've been doing some recent, like, self-assessing and looking at ways that I have self-sabotaged my own growth. Right? And a lot of times it's like, I'll make a decision. I'm going to stop teaching, right? And I stop teaching. And then, scarcity mindset, I had a plan, right? I was like, I got this, and that lined up, and none of it worked, which had me grasping for straws. I was like, I'm going to die, right? You just jump straight to that part. But then what I would do is go back to, like, the old habit of, like, oh, here's a guy that I like, right? Let me talk to this guy, because it's been a while since I talked to a guy, or however long. Let me talk to this guy while I'm also going through this rough transition. And then what ends up happening is I'm trying to focus on me and my transition while balancing a new whole person. And it's like, that's dumb, because now this person is demanding of something that I probably may not be able to wholeheartedly give, right? So once again, I can't focus entirely on my growth, because now I'm adding more baggage on top of it. So now I'm sabotaging my growth, and it's taking a little bit longer. Then I'll leave the situation, focus on me again for a bit. I'm making progress, and then boom, a year has gone by, or however much time has gone by. And it's not to say that you can't have someone while you work on yourself, but I do strongly believe that you want to make sure that you're in a certain place to balance a new person, right? And boom, here I go a year later again. And a new situation has now arisen with another person, and there I am once again. So things start off cool. I think, okay, I'm in a good place. But then it's like, nah, sis, like, you still have some things. Because I still wasn't affirming myself yet wholeheartedly past the surface level. I was still very much so wanting external validation of my worth. My mentor asked me, he said, when was the last time you felt like you shined and it wasn't from you doing something performative? And I was like, I don't know if I've ever felt like I shined and I wasn't performing in some type of way, whether it was for a person or on a stage. So what have you ran into any self-sabotage moments during your sabbatical?
I think one of the things that, I don't know that this is necessarily answering that, but one of the things that struck me is, even when we talk about the importance of affirmation, yes, affirmation is important, right? Positivity is important, but I think sometimes in the work of working on yourself, people will make it sound like it's a trip to Disney World.
Mm.
And it simply isn't.
It's not.
It is, it's a failure to do self-work that is only through this lens of positivity. I think that if I am looking at my own process with the sabbatical, a lot of folks will think like I started out setting goals and saying like, what do I want to accomplish in a sabbatical? One is a whole year. I'm newsflash, I am in month 2. April started month 2, so I got a long way to go. So I am by no means like an expert at any of this, and even at the end of the year, I don't know that I would be an expert for someone else, maybe for myself, right? Because I've spent that much time working on me. But one of the things that I did decide early in my sabbatical was that assessment was more important to me, but not assessment through the lens of society, because I do think that that is a part of the hangups that I actually had coming into the sabbatical. So for me, I have decided to take assessment into my own hands and do reflection and think about what are the things that matter to me that I actually want to assess. And the reasons that those matter are so personal that I wouldn't give someone my assessment and be like, yeah, here you go. Now do your sabbatical. No, I had to do that sitting. I had to ask those questions. I had to have some uncomfortable moments. I had to have some sad moments. I had to have some conversations with other people to understand things that contributed to where I'm at right now, which took 31 years. That's not a light task. And so I think sometimes when we do the affirmation work, people will do affirmations and say that they are something that they're not. And if you don't have self-awareness at the heart of it, then you're going to struggle. And so I have made some very intentional decisions, one of which you may be aware of if you have gone to my page or seen the flyer. My Instagram, none of my social media accounts are active. One of the reflections that I had is that if I'm going to see myself, I got to get rid of some of the noise. I've spent a ton of time with myself, but even in this first month, I've spent more time with other people. And that's something that I've reflected on as like such a deeply ingrained habit that is from being of service to others. I literally am saying I'm focusing on myself, but I have been stretching myself thin to be in all of these places. Right now, we are talking from Miami. I live in Atlanta. So I am very much thinking of that as maybe a hurdle, or not a hurdle, but definitely a learning very early on, is that it's hard to sit with yourself. And if you do the work of affirmation without the work of truly seeing yourself, your affirmations can easily be lies. And so it's one thing to have something that you're aspiring to, that you want to be, but it's another thing to be able to look at where you are right now and seeing value in both. And also looking at where you were and seeing value in that as well. And so I have taken on this lens of extreme curiosity with myself, and not this lens of critical feedback, right? So in this process of assessment, yesterday, I did a fitness assessment. I had to run a mile, walk a mile, and see what the time was. Next month, I'm going to do that fitness assessment again and see where I'm at. Now, that assessment has numbers and details that I care about. It's not my BMI, because I consider that racist, right? But there are elements that I do care about. I'm looking at my blood pressure count. I'm looking at different things that are important to me based off of my own desires and where I want to be. And so similarly, I think the hang up that folks might run into is if you are doing this work of trying to achieve something, trying to get somewhere, and you can't be honest with yourself, you can't sit in your truth, you can't sit with who you are, and sometimes those moments are very lonely, very frustrating, and very painful, right? But there's a lot of power in understanding yourself, and that is truly the only way that I see through it. Like, there are no shortcuts, there are no cliff notes, there are no YouTube videos where you can look at someone else's approach to that and copy and paste. It's really hard work that you have to do yourself.
Man, when I tell you to work hard, man, the work is hard. hard. So, like, it reminds me of a post I sent you with Sarah Jakes, Sarah Jake Roberts, and get her full name, her married name in there as well. And she did a interview. I've been watching a lot of her stuff lately, but she did this interview where she was talking about, like, the self-reflection she had to do after her first marriage, right? And realizing, like, her first marriage had a lot of toxic stuff that happened, infidelity and all type of stuff, to the point where she ended up at Child Protective Services because the officer was just like, yeah, y'all got too much going on in this house, right? And she was like, oh my gosh, I might lose my kids. This is like one of my biggest fears. And she had to really self-reflect, because we can say that a person is toxic, right? That's like everyone's favorite word. The person is toxic. And that's not negating that they don't have toxic tendencies, right? But there's a part of you that at some point you have to hold yourself accountable for. Well, how long are you going to entertain the toxicity? How long have you been out entertaining it? What about you allowed yourself to stay in it once you realize X, Y, and Z actions showed you where this relationship was going? Or the character traits of this person, and realizing, like, damn, like, this, I've seen this before. Or my spirit, being in tune with yourself, like, my spirit, my discernment is saying this is something I need to watch, right? Maybe I should take a step back and watch, whatever it might be. And she said she had to realize that the relationship that she was in, right, was not the disease within itself, but like a symptom of the actual disease, which was within herself. The toxicity within herself had existed for years, which is why certain things that she did, because she admits that he was dating another woman when she met him. So there were certain things that she was doing, right, that got her into this relationship with this man, and now being with him, having children with this man. So when I think about those type of things, it reminds me of, like, the self-work of, like, being honest with yourself, because in order to realize that you're self-sabotaging in some type of way, shape, or form, it does take you to look at yourself and say, why did I do that? What led me to that? Why did I sit there and entertain it for that long with another individual? Or why did I talk myself out of doing this interview for this job? Or whatever it might be. And I think a lot of times, like, when we're talking about doing self-work, you think it's going to be pretty, but that shit be hurting. Sometimes you hurt your own feelings. My therapist asked me a question yesterday, and she was like, I do want to, like, have an accountability moment with you. And I was like, oh shit. Right? I was like, I was literally just like, oh shit, man, what is it? And she asked me the question. I was like, yeah, well, here's where, my mindset was, and it was wrong. And at the same time, learning to hold yourself accountable with grace, which is another aspect of avoiding self-sabotage. Okay. In my mind, it's just like, as humans, we do stuff, and sometimes that stuff is dumb. Okay, right? And dumb to us, right? But everyone's dumb is relative. But sometimes it's just like, damn, I knew, right? But still being able to say, I could have done better. I learned now to, like, hold myself more accountable in these ways, and to extend yourself to grace, because it's so much ugliness that already exists in the world, and so much ugliness that already comes towards us, a lot of times possibly from other people or social media. The last thing we need is to be ugly to ourselves. And that's something that I've been learning as well. Because once again, I told you, I have this, like, I'm going to absorb everything mentality sometimes. So if someone tells me something good about myself, I'm absorbing it. But if someone tells me something negative about myself, because I'm not in tune, or I have not always been in tune with myself, I was more likely to absorb it and hold on to it and believe it, and allow that to take root in other decisions I would make, with what I would go after, with what I would strive for. And a lot of times that would once again lead to me sabotaging myself, or sabotaging really my own growth. Because I got all these other opinions, and I'm, like, not sitting with myself to say, no, this doesn't apply to me, you're projecting. Or no, you know what, that's how you may view me, but that's not who I am. Or you know what, wait, you might be onto something. Let me sit with this and dissect it for myself a bit, and having that type of hat or lens to do those things. How do you feel our upbringing, right, reflects in some of these ways that we've talked about self-sabotage showing up, right? So this idea of, like, being worker bee and having to be everywhere for everybody with you, right? To a certain degree, that we can say that might be learned behavior. right? So how do you feel your upbringing, whether it was purposeful, a lot of times it's not, or not purposefully taught to you, affects us and how we self-sabotage? Do you feel like that's the main place where it comes from?
I guess it's complicated. I think for me, I am really going to say, if there's anything that I'm reflecting on, it's the power of learned behavior. Yes, right? There's learned behavior. There are the models and the structures that you see in front of you every day that you then decide this is normal, right? This is how I behave. But there's also reinforced behavior. So, in the classroom, you try to control behavior in a variety of ways, right? And one way to reinforce behavior is to encourage it through praise. And I think that society in general, right? I know a lot of times we talk about our family dynamics, but even just navigating the world, what is reinforced or encouraged in our behavior, right? And what are the questions that we regularly get, right? As a woman in the workforce, when it comes to things that are about morale or things that are about celebrating somebody's birthday, why are we always approached, right? How is that reinforcement of our gender role in the office, right? And is that actually rewarded with compensation? Like, those are things that you might pick up thinking like, oh yeah, if I do more around the office, but now you're doing something that's not even getting you real recognition, at least in a way that contributes to your upward mobility. And so there's this world where it just feels like an add-on task that just makes sense for you, like, I should be doing this. And so I think there's that. I think I talked about the way that we praise and we congratulate people for sometimes unhealthy work-life balance, right? It's like, that person in your family or in your friend group that always is on their phone looking at work emails or always getting something done. And at the same time, that person might have an external image that is this person that has it all together. But there might be all hell breaking loose in their house, right? And so a lot of the things that reinforce are not as clear as just upbringing, but definitely society in general. I think we even talked about movies and how those things can make us think that things are supposed to be a certain way and that it's the norm. And like, especially we talk about like throwback movies. I think we talked about Girlfriends and that season all together.
So
and how,
cool.
yeah, like all kinds of messages that we get about how things should or should not operate that we have to really unpack and see what are the things that we are pouring into ourselves. Because just like the food that you eat, the stuff that you consume on a regular basis will influence your behavior.
I have to wholeheartedly agree with that. When we think about like how we conduct ourselves in relationships, like working with students, a lot of them, like I remember when Love and Hip Hop first started, and Love and Hip Hop started when I was like early high school, right? And it's still going. But I think at that point, my idea of relationships was formed in a different manner to where I looked at a lot of that stuff. And first of all, it didn't start off as bad as it is now. But I looked at a lot of that stuff that I would see on TV, and I don't think there was times I was like, ooh, this don't feel right to me, so I would stop watching it, right? But then when I interacted like later in life with students, and that was like their norm to watch that so I remember a boy came to my classroom and I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like looking for my female student. They had exchanged phones, and I was just like, why y'all exchange phones? And she said, well, he wanted to see if I was still talking to my ex. And I said, so he held your phone for the day? And she's like, yeah. And I said, don't you ever do something like that again in your life? She was just, I said, it's one, I was like, I'm grown paying my own bill and I can't, and I've had ex-boyfriend, you know, say, I want to go through your phone, or we can go through each other's phones, I was like, we're not about to start this love and hip-hop toxic shit. And it's not because I have something to hide. It's one thing if it's like, hey, babe, can you go through my phone real quick and get this number because I'm busy. I don't have a problem doing or saying something like that if I genuinely need that. However, the idea that you're going through my phone to look for something already means that you believe something is there. And if you have to do all that, my dear, right? But where does that mindset and mentality come from when we think about the songs that we listen to, or we think about, you know, the things that we see on TV? Someone's always cheating. This idea of love, like we don't really have a lot of love songs anymore. We have like sex songs, fast and slow sex songs. Like that's really what we have. But the genuine love songs, they come out, you know, once every 3 to 6 months. You might get a good one that's on repeat. Okay, but that in itself also introduces this concept of improper relationships. Or even when we see women being friends on TV, and what does that look like to see friendships, right? Because I feel like sometimes like we self-sabotage our friendships with the same gender, especially, right? This idea that women can't be friends, or, you know, some women say, well, I don't trust other women. So you going into this relationship or this possible new friendship with the woman already being distrustful, right? So that means whatever she do, you looking for something. And if you're going into something looking for it, it's one thing if it kind of pops up and it, my antenna's going up. It's another thing if you're going in looking for it, right? Because you're going to always find something that you're looking for, and you start to act accordingly. And next thing you know, we've ruined a relationship, or we don't know how to communicate properly anymore to just say, hey, when you did X, you know, it made me feel Y. And allowing that to lead to a resolution. Conflict resolution is also being able to properly resolve conflict resolution and learn each other's conversational style. Because some people, you can talk to people like, hey, yo, that shit bothered me. It's like, oh, my bad, friend. And y'all have that type of rapport. But some people you gotta... And there's nothing wrong with people that you have to, you know, do that with. But because that's just... They might need a more emotional, loving touch. And if you're still going to get the message across, and they're going to be receptive to it, but they just require a little bit more TLC, just a little pat rub, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we've taken this whole, I'm going to just tell you how it is, whether you like it or not. And if you can't stand it, then you're a bad friend, you are op, you're a fake friend, you're all of these different narratives.
I'm definitely tired of that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
What would you say, and we'll get ready to go into the rap, y'all.
Oh, God.
What would you say is one of the number one ways, since we were talking about, like, self-sabotage, what would you say is, like, the number one way for you that you feel like you keep your self-sabotage, like, a checks and balance right now?
I'm learning the power of time. And I say that in both ways. I think time can be something that it stresses some people out. Too much time passed and they are freaking out, right? It hasn't happened yet. Why hasn't it happened yet, right? It can't happen because it hasn't happened yet. And there are a lot of narratives about people who are yets that you can look at for inspiration. So that's one thing that I will say, is that time is a very powerful thing to consider. Because I realize that sometimes my mind works much faster than the rest of the variables that matter, right? The other person that is involved, the other entity that's involved. I have to give myself time to reflect and to come down, because my emotions, my mind, all of those things are a runaway train. And so if I don't actually have a process in place to sit with those things, then I might let them spill out prematurely. And now I've communicated something that if I had a few more rotations with, it would never have even been a comment, right? But now it has become a whole 4-page letter, right? in somebody's inbox. Or it has become a voicemail because they didn't answer and I couldn't talk to them and my mind went a million places. Or it has become an email to someone who I am working with about all the things that I'm worried about because I haven't heard back from them, when meanwhile, like, they just enjoying dinner with their family and they not worried about, you know what I'm saying? But I tell myself these very powerful stories. And so sometimes I have to understand my processing style. and give myself the space and time that I need so that I can actually have those moments where it's kind of like turning something into someone. I don't want to give someone something that's full of inaccurate, depictions or spelling errors, or it's kind of like, how they say you can write that letter and never send it?
Mm-hmm.
I do a version of that. Sometimes I do a recording where I just talk about how I'm feeling, and in a couple of days I listen to it and I'm like, well, that was some bullshit, because I don't feel none of that now, or none of that actually happened. And I also ask myself what is absolutely necessary to communicate and what is not. Some things are mine to have and cherish and hold and never share. And that's the truth, right? But some things are things that need to move forward. And so if I'm so bogged down in all of these other details, I'm trying to hit the necessary pieces, and then maybe I hold on to those other things that need a little bit more churning. And at the right time, when I'm ready to share, I will share.
I agree with that. I would definitely say that I have a similar, like, especially if I'm on a heightened emotion, I do my best not to engage with the direct person right away. So that looks like me making a voice note. That looks like me journaling. That looks like calling a good friend and like, hey, do you have the space to like talk about this with me for a second? That looks like sometimes just going through the thought mental process by myself and then reflecting later. I would also say, like, for me, it's really creating and holding a space for me personally for like the different things that I know make me happy, right? So like ensuring, like this week, I've been fasting between 9 and 6, and really even the way I've been starting my mornings, I would say it's more so of a fast. I really don't interact on social media. I haven't been scrolling on social media. I haven't been going through people's stories like that. I might post on my story only, right? And if I'm going, I might go to a specific person's page that I know write certain things that I enjoy seeing. Like, I'm gonna go strictly to their page, look through their story, and that's it, and then I'm getting off. But I'm not doing any of the most. So I think that for me has created a checks and balance system to avoid self-sabotage and really focusing on things I like. Oh, let me go work out. Oh, let me make sure I schedule this appointment with my therapist. Because when we're talking about, this idea of self-sabotage, like you said, it's a lot of checking in with yourself before you do something that will become a hindrance potentially to yourself, right? So you have to create that checks and balance system on what that looks like for you. Is it making a voice note? Is it writing? Is it talking to a friend? And sometimes it can be a mixture of those things and go with where your spirit leads. Are you grounding yourself? With this fast, I'm really learning certain things that I know I need in order to be productive with myself and to be productive with or for other individuals going forward. And before we jump into this wrap that I know Brianna's so excited for today, right? I just want to once again say, if you came in late, that today's topic was about self-sabotage. And when we're talking about the ideas of self-sabotage, we are once again looking at ways that you have become, or that you do things that become a hindrance to yourself. If you say, oh, I want to, have X amount of dollars by the end of the year, but you don't budget. Right? You're sad. How are you you're not budgeting. You're not keeping up with your financial plans. You're not really setting financial goals to keep track of, or setting realistic expectations on how much you need to save to reach that number. That is an example of self-sabotage. When you realize that you're in an unhealthy space and you're continuing to date knowing that you're not a healthy individual or a person, how can you date someone if you yourself are not healthy? You're reaching for something. Or if you are dating someone and you've realized that this is a toxic relationship and you're holding on to it, you're stopping yourself from leaving and getting the growth you need and possibly meeting a healthier person somewhere down the line. Anything that causes a hindrance to you is you stopping yourself from getting what your just due is. If you, like, sometimes it may be like, dang, I want to apply for this job. I think I'll be dope at it. But someone with 17 years of experience might also apply. Bump them. If it's for you, it's going to be for you. Go ahead and apply. Go ahead and submit that resume, because the only way to get a job is to actually apply for it, right? And to do your best to get it. So we want to make sure that you have those checks and balances and have some good friends that can tell you, hey, yo, what are you doing? Why are you stopping? Why are you selling yourself short? Why are you stopping yourself from obtaining the things that you want to obtain? Okay. You ready to wrap?
I guess so, girl.
You don't look so excited, Brianna.
Oh, you going first?
Huh?
You going first?
What?
You going first?
No, we going together.
We going together.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's crazy. It's rap and mimosas and we feeling real good. Gotta keep it hood, yeah, you know we keep it hood. Self-sabotage, we don't like to do that should. Yeah, my name is Michelle. And if I don't like them, no. I'ma show 'em to the dough. Then I'm gonna get some dough. I like to keep it real and I like to do my thing. Twerking on the stand and you know I keep it main. You know I keep it trill and you know I keep it good. You know LaShonda Johnson, yes she stayed in the hood. Driving with her people, yes she keep it really going. And she like to keep it flowing with some and mimosas and some champagne. Cause she don't like chicken, but I taste finger licking.
Okay, yeah.
Are you ready?
Shake it around, shake it.
What do you get to his face? What?
You shake it right your ankle. What do you get to his face? Yes, I got hearts, so apparently it was good. What am I need to draw. Y'all like my yin yang twins? No, nobody got it. You jack around your ankle. Jagga, jagga, jagga. Isn't that what he says? Is that not what he says?
What are we talking? You talking about Jagga,
Yes,
Bojangles?
yes, that. Shout out to my dog Bojangles. Hey, Bo.
All right. I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And with that being said, wow.
Yes, friend.
Wow.
Look, more emojis.
Do not hype that up. All right. And with that being said, you know we got to end with...
These bars in the holster, pouring up a drink, put my name on the poster. Women who can rap make you come a little closer. Step out the whip, drop a tip to my chauffeur. New guest on my list, champagne's by my hips. It's time to get lit, y'all know what it is. Rap, and mimosas.
Thank you all for tuning in. Catch up on the last week's episode. This is the 4th episode of season 3.
Woo.
And I look forward to seeing you next week. You never know who I might have on. See you then. I don't know how to end it.